Hey everybody, welcome to Harborside History for July. It is a steamy day here in Charleston because it's July. It's also National Ice Cream Month, so we're gonna be making some ice cream today. And because we're super extra at Historic Charleston Foundation, obviously we're gonna do it the historical way. So, ice cream has a really long history in human culture. You might think it's a new invention, but it's not. Ice cream's been around for millennia. It's been said that emperors in the Tang dynasty in China enjoyed a frozen milk and rice treat sometime between the 7th and the 10th centuries. That's the 600s to the 900s for those of you that don't love that math. Also, in the medieval ages, the Persians came up with a cordial drink, very sweet, sweetened with syrup and flowers, and sometimes even fruit. And they called it charbat. It was usually drunk as a cordial, but sometimes it was frozen and eaten with a spoon. Italian visitors to the area of the world where charbat was being enjoyed it themselves and brought it home to Italy. And they started messing with it and putting their own spin on it. They called it sorbetto in Naples. It's called sorbet in France. And we even have a version of it here in America, both sorbet and sherbet. So, the first record of ice cream in America actually comes from a letter that was written in 1744, but we know that it was being enjoyed around the British colonies in the 17th and early 18th centuries. That's the 16 and 1700s. So, we've got a lot of work to do, and today we are making a historic recipe for Parmesan ice cream. That's right, like Parmesan cheese. So, we're gonna end up here, but there's work to do first. Let's go. Today, we're making Parmesan ice cream, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's ice cream made with Parmesan cheese. Now, it's a really simple custard recipe. All it takes is some eggs, some cream, some sugar. Today, we're using simple syrup, and, of course, Parmesan cheese. So we're gonna cook the custard in the pot here until it's a nice thick custard, until it leaves a channel on the back of the spoon, and then into the sabottiere it goes, and we're gonna finish the rest of the process outside. You may think that this is a strange sounding recipe, and it kind of is, but it was first published in a cookbook called The Complete Confectioner by a guy who was probably appropriately named Frederick Nutt in 1789. Are you ready? We're gonna give it a try. So the custard is in the sabottiere. So we're gonna start with our bucket. So it needs a layer of ice. And then after our first layer of ice, this is what the sabottiere is gonna sit on. So we do a layer of rock salt, because rock salt makes a chemical reaction with ice to lower the temperature of the ice to make it below freezing. And copper is an incredible conductor. So copper is really going to get cold as I surround it with the rest of the ice. So this is an 18th century technology. The hand crank ones that we all think of when we think of old-fashioned ice cream maker actually weren't patented until 1843. And they were patented by a lady named Nancy Johnson. So this is a super labor-intensive way to ice creams and custards. And people like George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, James and Dolly Madison, they all had a sweet tooth, and they all had an extravagant taste that included a taste for ice cream. So guess who's doing all this work? Because it's not George or TJ or James or Dolly. It's usually the enslaved who live on those properties, who are in bondage to those people who would be doing this work. After we get the sabottiere completely surrounded here, there we go. The process is to let this cool down. We want the tube to chill down for about 10 minutes and get really, really cold. And then once it gets cold, we're gonna start twisting it and agitating the cream that's inside. So I'm gonna put a little bit more salt and a little bit more ice in here, and we're gonna let this sit for 10 minutes, and then we'll come back and get started. In early America, we've already talked a little bit about the founding thinkers who had access to the resources for ice cream. And frankly, it was the upper socioeconomic brackets that had access to begin with. Thomas Jefferson brought back the idea of vanilla ice cream from France. But did you know that chocolate ice cream was probably one of the earliest flavors to hit America? I know, vanilla is everybody's favorite these days, except for me. I love chocolate ice cream. And cacao was being consumed here as a drink and in a lot of different ways from early in the days of colonization. It wasn't until a little bit later that vanilla beans came as a flavoring agent. Thomas Jefferson had an 18-step ice cream recipe for vanilla ice cream. It was his favorite. George Washington, in the summer of 1790, spent almost $200 on ice cream alone. And if you're wondering the transfer rate to 2022, that's more than $6,400 in one summer on ice cream alone. Both of them had objects in their home inventories, including ice cream tins and sabottieres. And as I mentioned, James and Dolly Madison had a penchant for it as well. Dolly liked to serve ice cream at the White House. Her favorite flavors, strawberry and oyster. You betcha. Well, I made some oyster ice cream, and we had some of our staff be very brave and give it a try this week. So everybody came out okay. That and parmesan, peach ice cream, which I decided to make because it is high season for peaches in South Carolina. And that one is more of a sorbet. And then, of course, chocolate. Being the oldest kind, I had to make it. So we've got all sorts of things that we had our staff sampling. Every single one was made right here in this sabottiere and bucket. I can't look yet. I have to let it sit. So, while we're waiting for this to chill down again, did you know that the first ice cream parlor in America was opened in, you guessed it, New York City? Everything happens in New York City. And it opened in 1790. Well, this was the method for the longest time until 1843, when Nancy Johnson patented the hand-cranked ice cream maker. And frankly, having done this a bunch of times now, I can see why that was such an important technological innovation. But just like everything else that was part of industrialization and the sort of mass production movement in America, creating ice cream makers that were less work for more output enabled other people, different socioeconomic brackets, to access this particular confection. It wasn't just for the rich anymore. Prices on ingredients were starting to become more affordable, and the technology was improving. So by the mid-19th century, there was a lot more access to ice cream and a lot more ice cream parlors opening up. And in fact, there was a caterer in Philadelphia. He was a free black man named Augustus Jackson. Now, I'm trying to track Augustus Jackson down in historical record. A lot of recent media and news articles have called him the father of ice cream. And I love that. I need to find him in the Philadelphia directory because it's apparently Augustus Jackson who came up with the idea of adding rock salt to the ice in order to lower the temperature below freezing. I love that idea. I want to find him in the historical record. He's supposed to have owned a catering business in Philadelphia, and he's supposed to have sold tins of ice cream to ice cream parlors around the city for sale. So surely we can find Mr. Jackson in some primary sources. I'm definitely going to enlist Sarah, our archivist, to see if we can find some records of Augustus Jackson, free black man in Philadelphia in the 19th century, who was the father of modern ice cream. And I should mention, he wasn't just an ice cream maker in Philadelphia. Before he opened his catering shop, he was nothing less than a chef at the White House. Okay, so this is going to take a couple of hours, and to be honest with you, I've changed the recipe, so we'll see if it even works on this really hot day. I changed the recipe by halving the liquid, but keeping the same amount of cheese because I wanted it to be really Parmesan-y and cheesy. So if it looked like I had a broken custard earlier, that's why. It wasn't a broken custard, it was just really cheesy and a little thick. So we'll see if it works, but if it does, it's gonna come out like this. A really nice Parmesan ice cream. That is so good. I definitely understand why this was on the menu as far back as 1789. It starts out sweet and it ends Parmesan-y, and you might think that that's a terrible thing, but it's not. It's delicious. This would be great with a sweet and savory dessert. I'm gonna finish this spoonful. So, that's gonna do it for this episode of Harborside History. I love that I get to make ice cream for my job, you guys. Okay, stick with us. Make sure that you like, comment, give us a follow. And remember that there's historical precedent for this. So if you're at an ice cream parlor and you see a weird flavor, give it a try. It's probably delicious. So stay cool out there. It's a hot one. And make sure that you look around. History is delicious. And it's happening every day.